hard drive. Let's see. Okay, so recap, we've been off for a week. Hopefully you enjoyed it. And we are back on track. So this is I just want to like give a little bit of like the context for now what kind of thing. So we are going to keep going. This is the last tool that we're covering in these trainings. So, recap, we went through Google Search Console, GA4, and SEMrush was last time. And then today we're going to be talking through Surfer SEO. We're going to talk a little bit more broadly today about like content tools in general, because there are quite a few of them, and I'm going to use Surfer SEO like illustratively, but there are obviously like not only content optimization tools, but if you exist in the world, there are like now a lot of content AI tools that everybody's kind of debating, like, does this have value? Is it worth it? And obviously for those of you on my team, like we did a Chat GPT versus writers piece, and then we just did a Jasper AI versus writers piece, and just trying to like more thoroughly help people understand what these tools are and aren't capable of, so that as they can encounter them in the real world. So we'll kind of dive into a little bit of that today, in addition to just showing you how to use a tool like Surfer SEO for optimization. Lindsay's kind of our master user, I guess, for Surfer SEO. But I won't make her talk too much. Okay, so yeah, we went through Google Search Console, Google SEMrush, and then so this is kind of the last tool. And then starting next week, we're gonna do some real live like things. So what I'm thinking is, so you don't have to sit here and like watch me stare at a screen for 2 hours. I will do an SEO audit and show all of you our SOP, our standard operating procedure for SEO audits in advance of that call. And then we will analyze one. So we'll just keep it at our normal time and keep it at an hour. And then if you want to do that pre-work of like what I'll film part of it probably to show you where I pull the data from. And then the idea is you and I will all of us will walk through, okay, here's what the audit actually looks like, because even just the presentation of the audit, like to a client, usually takes at least an hour. So it is a lengthy process. It can be, Megan takes up to 10 hours to do an SEO audit usually. So we won't, I'm not gonna make you sit with me for that long. And I'm definitely not gonna make you sit with me for 2 hours. Just, I think attention span wise, like it won't be productive. So I will submit to you some pre-work for that, so you can just like educate yourself in advance. Our SOP for SEO audits is quite robust. So you even just reading it will take a little bit. So we'll kind of do that. And then we'll work on SEO reporting. So I'm doing that in order on purpose, so that first you kind of see like, here's the story you need to understand about a website, and then into what are the things you need to know and look at every single month, and kind of to measure, to monitor and measure the progress. Hey, Alicia. So we'll do that. And then I went ahead and set invites for March. And if you're hanging in there with us, we're going to get into a lot more detail on SEO content, SEO strategy, and then basically like what used to work versus what works now. Because the challenge, if you're going to go into the real world and like research a lot of this yourself, is the rate of change in this industry is significant. So like all the YouTube videos you're watching and all the articles you're reading and stuff could very easily be outdated. So at the very least, what I can do is like pull out for you and say like, hey, this used to exist, this doesn't exist anymore. Or yeah, this is still relevant, or this doesn't work, whatever. So that's kind of where we're going to go. And then we'll go into some technical stuff in the month to come. Okay. So I just wanted to like zoom out as we're getting into this new month and kind of give you a feel for kind of what's coming up. So again, this will be the last week that we're doing a tool, and then we're going to get into like some really heavy duty application of like, how do we actually use all of these tools in the real world to evaluate websites and all that stuff. Any questions? Cool. All right. So today we're going to look at, like I said, Surfer SEO. So Surfer SEO is a content optimization tool. The other one that you'll probably encounter that's like equally popular and a little, maybe even more popular in some circles, is called Market Muse. They function very similarly. The idea is that you can do some SEO research in it, nothing close to what you can do in SEMrush and things like that we've looked at, but you can do some. And then you basically take content from the internet and put it in here, and it tells you This is good. This is not good. This is why, right? And what it's not doing is just pulling data from the keyword level. So when we've gone through and we've pulled data out, you've already seen there are a lot of dimensions to data, right? Data is not one dimensional. It's also not two dimensional. There are often multiple dimensions to data, especially like when we were looking in Google Analytics, that make it really tricky to just tell a one-to-one story. In other words, you can't just say to a client, if we put this keyword on your website, this will happen. Like there's no such recipe that exists in the world of SEO because it's multifactorial and there are multiple dimensions to data. So if you're approaching an SEO strategy from a keyword perspective, you're going to do that very differently than you're approaching it from a traffic perspective, right? There's all these kind of different ways to skin the cat. Surfer SEO and tools like it are mostly focused from the keyword channel. Okay, so you're like building strategies based on keywords. And it's evaluating the performance of content like content on the internet. So you'll see in a minute when we practice with the content editor, it's basically it's using AI, what doesn't, right? And natural language processing, which is a lot more interesting for us than AI, right? Because AI is nothing and everything at this point, right? Like true AI basically is not what any of these tools are using. Sanders, correct me if I'm wrong. More accurately, it's using natural language processing to basically pull linguistic trends and data out of existing content on the internet and then tell you, if you write this way, it will compete against, or it will at least mimic the things that are already winning. It will mimic the things that are ranking well. And if you mimic, so then the logical conclusion is if you mimic the things that are ranking well, you will also rank well. It's not a guarantee, right? But it is a way to go about it. So this entire tool and tools like it, content optimization tools, are built on that assumption. If we can understand the attributes, the linguistic attributes for the most part, linking to of content that ranks well for certain keywords on the internet, then we can deconstruct what that content did and reconstruct it on our own website, and it will do the same thing. Now, what does that not take into account? It doesn't take into account the actual website you're putting it on. So you could put a picture perfect optimized piece of content on a slow, buggy website and it won't work, right? So I just want to make sure that as we kind of approach, and okay, you could say, I'm going to build this piece of content perfectly for this keyword that gets 12,000 hits a month, and I'm going to put it on a website that gets 300 hits a month. It won't work, right? Just the math doesn't work out. So I just want to make sure we really, really quickly like check some of our assumptions about what a tool like this is actually capable of. All a tool like this is capable of is telling you, for this keyword, this is the kind of content that high performing websites or high ranking pages are creating. You cannot make the exact conclusion then that if we create the exact thing and put it on our website, it will perform. Okay, so just to clarify. So if this tool cannot prescribe or predict what will happen, then what is it good for? Just logically. These aren't like technically rhetorical questions. It's good for teaching us. Okay. It's good for teaching us what high performing content looks like. And you will, the more you use a tool like this, start to memorize and understand for different key phrase families, the type of content that performs best. So you start to build this linguistic bank of understanding, right? And the more you do it, the more familiar you become with the formula. Because of course there is a formula, right? Like we don't just write an article with an H1 and 1,000 words, right? Like we know, all of us here know, I think at the very least, there's a pretty specific formula for how you create SEO content. So this takes it a step further than to say like you need an H1 and 3 H2s and the H3 and the hierarchy has to be in place and 2 external links and 3 internal. Like it takes it beyond that very basic formula into a place of more complexity. And it helps you start to understand what will and won't work. Okay. I think these are fraught with danger because they just, and that's why like I clarified for so long. People plug stuff into here. They spit out a bunch of garbage that sounds like it's written for robots. And then they're like, tell their clients, like, if you post this, it will work. Like every step of the way, you've made a mistake or you're operating under a flawed assumption. So don't do that. Use these tools judiciously. Think about what you can learn as you use them. So when you use this tool, the tool is not magic and the tool is not flawless and it's not going to create something perfect. You have to bring your judgment and your brain to it and let it educate you. So it will tell you the truth. It'll tell you what's going on the internet around these certain keywords and key phrase families. So believe that, believe it as fact, and then decide what the terms of engagement are for actually becoming competitive. Understanding the algorithm changes all the time. So, all right. I know that was a spiel and a bit of a soapbox, but I feel like it's incredibly important that you do not look at a tool like this and think, done, sorted, I've made SEO. Like, please be careful. Like, okay, UI. So when you log into Surfer SEO, you can integrate Google Search Console. You can integrate website. You can integrate SEMrush. I don't do any of this because I'm very picky about data and I'm not interested in giving this tool my data for free. So I don't hook anything up to each other, which I realize is stupid, but whatever. A couple different things you can do. You can do keyword research. So I'll show you what it looks like. What do you want to look at? Pick something.
Radio frequency gaskets.
Oh God, your job is so boring. Your job is not boring. It's great.
I love my job.
Yes, yes. Okay. The first thing you're going to notice when you start using Surfer SEO is time. It takes a while to pull data. Like when you go to a content editor in here, like it'll take a minute and you'll be like, holy cow. That's a good thing. Consider the amount of data it's sifting through to give you any kind of insight. Okay. So that's a good thing. We want it to, we want it to take a minute. So basically what you do is you go put it through here. We'll look at one that's already in here just so we don't have to wait. And it'll give you a whole bunch of recommendations. Okay. So you can filter based on intent, which if you remember our categories match the categories of intent that you saw in SEMrush. So what does that tell us? Global categories tell us this is not a tool specific designation, right? If it's a global category that's accessible through more than one tool, then it stands to reason some other platform has set the parameters around that delineation. Okay. So when you go in, you can say with confidence, like this is commercial, right? Or shopping, right? So it's going to call it different things, but you'll notice the number of categories are the same and the general like vibe of the categories are the same. That tells you with some certainty that they didn't decide this. Okay. Google decided this. So that point being, that's data gleaned from actual search. All right. We got local, we got informational and shopping. You can go in and you can decide cluster ranges. Well, we don't really need to go into that, but search volume range is really important, right? So like what we just said, if you take a 15,000 volume keyword and say, I want to rank it on this 300 hit a month website, like good luck. I mean, it's not going to happen. So you go in, you could pick a range, whatever, and that'll whittle your results down a little bit. So basically what it's doing. So what do you see? What do you think this is? What do you think this did?
I mean, it's a lot more boring than RF gaskets. I'll tell you that much. But
So
it looks like, sorry.
No, go.
I was just going to say, it looks like it's giving you kind of a launching point. So it gives you some sort of like header to work with, and then things that would fall easily underneath that topic. Or like
Who is this? Is this you, Sanders?
Yes.
Yeah.
Just
Did you
playing
find
around with it
anything
earlier
useful?
today. I mean, I'd never used it before, and I was just kind of playing around with it. But yeah, I pulled some just keywords that seemed to work.
Now it's completely stalling. Yeah. So basically you go and you see search volume, you see keyword difficulty, and then what it's going to do is it's going to like create little bundles, like little potpourri sachets of potential useful content clusters. Now, do not make the mistake of thinking this is building you a topic cluster strategy. It is not, right? A topic cluster strategy is infinitely more complex than what this is doing. This is basically all this is doing, linguistic association. That's it. It's saying linguistically, these words are associated and we're going to bucket them based on intent. It's very superficial. So again, don't get fooled to thinking like this in the last 6 seconds has just replaced hours of work building a topic cluster. It's not quite that easy. All right. So when you click in, you'll basically see, okay, here's a list of recommended keywords, and it's just going to give you a fruit salad. It's going to give you a combination of like higher traffic, higher difficulty, lower traffic, lower difficulty. I don't remember what I said difficulty the first time, but opposite. So it's just kind of giving you a combination of things, okay, that you could potentially rank for. So that's interesting, fine. To Sanders' point, like it's not really infallible, and its really only use is that it will kind of give you ideas. All right, other things that you can do. So content editor. So we'll do that in a second. So we'll come back to that. You can do an audit. This is, again, remember, this isn't looking at technical. This isn't looking like GSC, site performance. This isn't looking at GA, channel acquisition. This isn't looking at SEMrush, kind of big picture site performance. This is just content. Like it's just focusing on on-page SEO for the most part, okay? So it can give you recommendations based on, hey, this is what your site is performing well for. You could boost these things, right? I don't know why this is taking so long to load, and then it'll basically like give you some optimization. In no universe would I say use this over like SEMrush's on-page optimization recommendations. SEMrush's on-page optimization recommendations are going to be far superior. Like they're just going to be better. This is fine, but it's not great. You can evaluate a full domain. Okay, so I did put our domain in here, but it seems to be having trouble existing. Here, let's see if we can, hold on. I'm not sure why I went to that. All right, let's see if it goes. We can see if it'll pull it up. It's going to take a minute. Okay, here. So basically it'll tell you these are some of the low-hanging fruits. All right, we don't have many recommendations, but it'll tell you like these are some things you could write for. I think all of these are garbage and not useful to me. But if I had Google Search Console hooked up, it would probably tell a lot better story, right? Because it would be pulling all of my search data, all of my all of my queries, all of those things. So there could be value in it. Last thing is a Serp analyzer. So this is actually really, really useful. Let's find, so let's do, what keyword do we want to do? Let's do something interesting. Any keyword. Dry rot. All right. So it's going to run, and then I'll show you what it looks like. So this is where the NLP is actually does give you some interesting data that you wouldn't see in a different tool. It's coming. Who remembers what Serp stands for?
Search engine ranking page.
That would have been very embarrassing for all of you. Okay. Or maybe me, I guess you didn't know that by the end of these. All right, so we'll see what the keyword makeup looks like in comparison. So again, if you want to look at a keyword in its like pure little state by itself in seclusion, you can use any tool. You could pull up SpyFu, you could pull up the free Moz, right? What this says is it's going to give you comparative analysis, okay? In context based on the performance of this keyword on the internet, which is, or in Serp, which is really helpful because at the end of the day, like every SEO effort is competitive by nature, right? You're trying to beat other pages. So knowing that competitive framework is really helpful. So what this is going to tell us is it's going to tell us for the word dry rot, here's the position in search results. So think about this for a second. This is really interesting. Most of the time, what you're evaluating is a URL, right? What this is evaluating is Serp. So this is evaluating the keyword itself, okay? Which is interesting. So it's a totally different analysis. And what this is going to tell us is in the makeup. So for this keyword, pages that are in positions 1 through 10 have about 1,500 words. So if a client comes to you and says, I want to write just short form blogs, I want to write a 300 word on dry rot and try to rank for it. You could pull this up and be like, based on the metrics of that keyword and the content that performs for it, that is not the correct choice. It's just not possible, right? And again, we don't set that. The internet does, right? Serp does. And then you would see the drop off in word count is significant between the ones that are ranking really well and the ones that are ranking kind of in no man's land. And then you have a random increase again for really low, maybe those are old, I don't know. But this is going to give you a whole lot more stuff. So then this is going to tell you, okay, who dominates for this keyword? Wikipedia, right? Safeguard Europe, McCarthy painting, very random. It's going to tell you the pages, right, in Serp. So what all this is doing is it's replicating the actual search engine results page. The cool thing about this is it's also scoring the content. So we'll look in just a second at the content editor and look at how it scores content, but it's basically telling you, okay, this is obviously Wikipedia has a huge domain score, right? Because it's incredibly authoritative, but this content isn't actually that good. So the content quality and relevance of this isn't that good. So why would it be number one? Is it number one because it's really good content? No, right? It's number one because of domain authority. So this is where you get into that conversation sometimes with clients where they're like, Joe Schmo, the plumber down the road, ranks number one for dry rot. Why can't we? And you're like, well, turns out his website's been around for 15 years, right? And he has like a really randomly high domain authority. So it helps you, again, we talked about at the very beginning, like the multidimensional aspect of all of this is not so linear, and you have to think in multiple dimensions in order to make strategic decisions or build a strategy. So yeah, the content's not actually that great. They just have a really good domain authority. Same with this one, but they have a moderate domain authority. So what does that tell us? Tells us we don't know the whole story. Like we don't know why they would be ranking as well as they are for that. Again, with the third one, same deal. Like their domain authority is terrible, reflects, they don't have that many backlinks. They have basically no SEO strategy. So my guess would be it's an old website, right? That started ranking a long time ago. So it's gathered domain authority regardless. But then you've got these people over here are PermaGuard. So what do we know about them? Their content scored 100, which tells me it's written by robots, right? There's no way, like a human's not gonna let's look at it. Tragic. So this was written exactly for SEO. Like this is like textbook SEO content, right? Textbook. God, I can't. Okay, why did we search for that? Start volunteering, please. That was a terrible idea. I don't want to look at dry rot. Okay, so textbook content, right? So what do we see? The first example, we see somebody with great domain authority, terrible content, but they got to page 1. Second one, we see someone with moderate domain authority, but killer SEO content, and they got to 5, right? There are so many factors that impact how a site ranks, and you don't know all of those things when you just pull up an incognito tab like we all do and Google a phrase and think, okay, these are the 5 front runners. What you don't know is all of this, right? Which is really important for making a strategic recommendation that you feel confident about and that you can stand behind. All right, so then it's going to pull in common ranked keywords, which is really powerful. It's going to pull in a couple of additional data points that you probably wouldn't get if you like pulled this, SEMrush has that too, right? Every SEO tool does, where it's like, people also ask common keywords, informational, blah, blah, blah. This is going to tell you how many pages are shared by that keyword, search volume, and the degree of relevance. That's where the NLP comes in, right? Because NLP ranks linguistic components, and then it's going to rate them based on how much linguistic overlap there is. So that's kind of that NLP factor coming in. And this is going to give you a couple different categories, right? So then you could say, okay, we want to write like a sequence of Q&As or things like that. All right. So that's going to give you questions that are related. This is going to give you popular words. So this is something that we'll look at in the content editor in a second. But basically, this is probably the most useful thing for us as writers, because what it does is it starts to build, like I said at the very beginning, like a bank of not just, when you write a piece of content, like you're searching for synonyms, you want to say things different ways. I always said like great writers kind of write well for SEO by accident, because they're already really good at not repeating language too much and using very close cousin kind of terminology, right? They're good at that. That's just what good writers can do. This helps you understand and build like an SEO vocabulary. So like I can write SEO almost without doing anything like this anymore, because I've done it for so long. Like, and Ross can probably do this with like any accounting content. Like you just get to the point where you've repeated something so many times, all the variations, all the different ways to say it. And you kind of know in your head, like you start to memorize the patterns of placement. So like for key phrases and things, you start to memorize, like I already know phrasing something this way probably has more search volume than phrasing it this way. Like I don't have to look it up. I can just guess, right? Because I've done it so many times. So this is where seeing it in black and white helps you begin to think through like those patterns, right? And when you go to edit yourself, like what could this be missing? Like what variation did I not use? Did I not use the question version of it? Did I not switch the order of the words? Did I not repeat exact match and then partial? Like you just start to kind of build those habits with yourself. And this is really helpful to do that. All right. So those are the words themselves. And then it does it in phrase version 2. Okay. So, like things like look like and how to, and, find and words like you already know, like that's just how people talk and search for things. And then things that are common, right? So this is also really important. Like companies that want to be tech companies do this a lot, where they're like, we're just going to like reinvent the alphabet and talk about things like nobody's ever talked about them before, or like use words the wrong way and it's funny, or like take a verb and make it a noun. And sure, people destroy the human language all the time. They destroy all kinds of languages and linguistic conventions and things like that. And that's fine. It's fine to dismantle linguistic conventions, but there is a certain protocol for how humans talk. And if the majority of people use a word a certain way for a certain reason, like you can't use it a different way and expect it to work for search, maybe for branding, but not for search, right? So this is where you just kind of start to establish that and say like, all right, it's pretty important that if I'm going to talk about dry rot, I'm also going to talk about source of moisture, whatever this thing is, rot fungus, brown rot, right? Like these are the important related concepts that I have to cover if I hope that this page is going to rank. And then common backlinks. So a Surfer SEO is trying to become a little bit more technical, but I don't really have anything to say about that. I don't know that it's going to catch up. All right. Any questions about Serp? It's cool, right? And it's showing you different data than you've seen in any of those other tools. Because it's just treated.
Yeah, I didn't realize it could do all this stuff. And I think this is super helpful for, if you take on a new topic that you don't know anything about. So like, yeah, if it's something that you write for every day, then you probably don't need any of these features. But if you suddenly sign up a dry rot company, I can see why that would be helpful.
You build like a little language map for yourself. Where it's like, these are the ways people talk about this stuff, which is fun. All right. So now what we're going to do is we're going to go into the content editor itself. So let's pick, we're going to do this 2 ways. Who wants to volunteer for the altar? Let's find a piece of, we can do one of ours if you want. Or does anybody have, so I want to do 2 categories in the content editor. So I want to do a low scoring article that reads really well. and a high scoring article that reads poorly. So we could use that dry raw one we just saw. And then a low scoring article that reads really well. Let's pick, we could do one of mine. I'll sacrifice my dignity. Where are we? Creative. Here we go. This is probably terribly written for SEO. But how dope is that graphic? Ison's killing it these days. I love it so much. All right, so to use the content editor, what you do is you put in the keyword that you want to rank for, and then it's going to build a content editor. And then I will show you how to actually, basically what we're going to do is we're going to copy and paste my content into it, and then it's going to score my content abysmally. And then you're going to start to see what it recommends I do differently. I should not have put the power of creative constraints. I should have put creative constraints. Dudes. Well, too late. It's already started. All right. So then we'll do this content. Now, technically, this content is written okay, right? Like I've got H2s and H3s. I've got links, right? In no universe would I claim it was written for SEO. And we're about to see something that'll prove that. All right, so I built the content editor. Basically what this is doing now is it's going to go ahead and it's going to score any content that I put in here against that keyword. So I'm going to paste it all in. 31, God have mercy. All right, so then what it does is it does this score, okay? And it's cool because it's color coded. I always tell people like this can be very addicting. Because what you'll do then is you can start to go through your work and look and see, okay, if I actually wanted to rank for that keyword, first of all, well, let's just diagnose my own work. So what's wrong with the content structure? Can I change that? So the content structure.
A lot of short sentences and not very consistent paragraphs.
How dare you?
From an SEO standpoint.
No, you're right. I do feel quite personal all of a sudden. Yes, exactly. My paragraphs are tragic, right? Because I use way too many of them. My headings are okay, but just barely. How many headings I had for how much content. And my word count is what?
A little high. Says.
I'm wordy, right? The other interesting part of this as it scores content that you want to look at is this. So okay, what we just saw with that 100 on the dry rot thing is like very rare. It's very rare that you see anything that scores 100, and not everything should score 100. So for instance, like when Lindsay goes in and does optimization tasks in here, I'm not always telling her, like, I never tell her you have to get to 100. Right, for optimizing this content. If you do, you will almost always create something that sounds ridiculous. Okay, because it's just too much. And not every piece of content is supposed to rank there. So the average for this keyword, which I'm sure has zero traffic because it's long tail and weird, but the average would be like a score of 56 and the top would be a score of 65. So even the best content on the internet for this key phrase only hits a score of 65. So just to clarify, like there are contextual parameters that help you set expectations. So then what I can do is I can go in and I can start pulling. So green means it's there, and then it's going to give you the range of how many instances of that keyword it would recommend. Okay. Red is bad because it means it's not there. Yellow is like, and green is good. Okay, so it's just color coded to match the little like temperature gauge up there. So then what I would start doing, I don't even have the word that I've set as my H1 in the article. But when I put it there, look what happens. Oops. So now I'm green. Okay. The gamification element of this is really tempting because you can literally just go through, right? So what does the fact that I'm doing that and changing the score immediately tell you? You can't just do this without thinking. You can't just edit this and like go in and be like, okay, I just have to plug in these extra 20 keywords, right? If that worked, every AI tool would be fine and we would never have to worry about our jobs. We could just go do something else. as you add the keywords, but then let's look. So if I go over, it's going to tell me you went too far. Okay. So it's important to remember, because if you're new to optimization work, the risk of over optimizing is there. Okay. Like there is a sweet spot. Like you can't keyword stuff. Like, and the temptation of a tool like this is that you will, right? So you just go back and you kind of have got to reel back some of your work. So if you notice, this score is also going up as I'm doing that. Okay. So everything kind of tracks along. So this is a good example of, in my opinion, an article that reads well, that's written for humans exclusively, that has pretty terrible SEO. And yet I can say, like, out of everything on the internet, it's not like it was so tragic that it wouldn't rank for this very random long tail keyword. Okay. Or key phrase. And then, yeah. So this is the content editor where you put content in. There is also content briefs that you can build in here, which we'll look at the very end, because I don't think you should ever use them. Please don't. Let's do another content editor first. I have reasons. Oh, we did leave this up. Okay, let's run this through. So this reads wild, right? Like just wild. And yet it got 100. Let's see if it gets 100 this time. Is it called wet rot? Wait, no, I didn't go far enough. Dry rot, wet rot. Where's the H1? Let's look. Is this a Magento site? Is that what that just said? Sanders, why would this be a Magento site? Isn't that an e-com platform? Strange, right? All right, well, let's do dry rot, because that was the original keyword that we used. That is 8,100 hits a month.
It's a
dry
big
rot.
issue.
Is it?
Dry rot is a massive issue.
Who knew? Is this the H1? This is the weirdest coded website I've ever seen. And why are they selling? Oh, I see. So you can buy products. So yeah, it must be Magento then. Interesting. Oh,
I mean, a fungicide's not going to save you if you have dry rot. That's all I'm going to say.
is this kid, are we calling this kid out right here? He didn't write it. A ghostwriter wrote it.
Greg and I have to talk then, if that's the case.
Greg with 2 G's. Greg good.
Edgy. Ooh.
I can't ever put these on YouTube. You know that, because we go off on these tangents and it's very inappropriate. Okay. Look at that. That's amazing. Amazing. And yet, okay, so this is what, position 5 for this keyword in Serp, I think, right? If I remember correctly. And yet, okay, now we're pulling it for the US. So that may actually have been my flaw. I shouldn't have done that. Sorry. And yet it has too many words. Interesting. So what does this tell you? Rules are made to be broken. Has the right amount of headings, right amount of paragraphs. But look at that. 90 times. That is tricky though, because when you're talking about something like this, how do you not use the word? I discovered that when we were doing our cybersecurity, when we were doing those redacted blogs, they were like, you use this word way too many times. And I was like, there's literally no other way to say it. Like it's a very specific thing, right? So that can become very tricky. All right, so let's just look at it compared to what we just saw. Look at the difference, right? So they've got a lot more green than I had. Definitely seems like some over optimization, right? So they probably got sold this piece by an SEO company that went a little overboard. It would be, okay, we can't get off topic, but it would be interesting to see how old this website is and when this blog was published or first indexed. So it's still missing a lot, right, of words, and it overused a lot of words. But generally, like the parameters of it are fine. And then here's the NLP. Let's see what the headings are. 1, 2, 3. Yeah, they could have used dry rot, fungus. Yeah, so there were some like related words that would be a little like that would seem very obvious that they didn't use. So maybe it's just old, maybe it's, you know, not US based, and yeah, it's competing against all these UK sites. So I made a mistake. I should have run the parameters global. Sorry about that. Okay. Based on the comparison, my piece versus this piece, what are the takeaways between having evaluated those two things? I don't have an answer in mind. There are many possible things you could have thought.
I'd be curious to see how many people actually make it through the entirety of that article after being beat to death with dry rot. 2,300 words worth of, or 2,800 words worth of dry rot content. Sounds like it would just bounce around in my head. And they feel like words just to be words on a page. Like they don't, yeah, they might be answering the question, but like, holy, I don't want to read that, even if I had a dry rot problem.
Yeah.
If you have a dry rot problem, now you're on their Magenta site to buy some product to help you with dry rot, and it's working for them if they have the #1 spot on Google for dry rot, I guess. So different ways to play this game.
I wonder if so many people would click through that and then see an advertisement at the head of the page and go, oof, I'm not reading that whole article, but there's a product here, and we'll just go there.
So there's absolutely in us who create content for a living, right? This like moral objection, SEO for the sake of SEO, right? Like, how dare you? Like, there are humans in this world. How dare you not serve them? And yet, Google is not a moral entity, right? There are ways to play this game that are just playing the game. And it's not unethical to do so. And there are SEO strategies that deprioritize the human reading the content. And I'm sure the people working at this company are wonderful people who have children and medical expenses and school tuition, and like they got to make a living too. Like, and so I think it's important for us as we analyze this, like you'll absolutely understand like where your line is in your business to be like how important, like for us, I don't really care about Google at all, right? I kind of care about like 30 people reading our blog, but that's me, right? That's my line. Like I'm only writing for humans because our business doesn't rely on the performance of our website. I was running an e-commerce site, B2B SaaS, all these different things. Like everybody has different priorities and different lines. And the strategy that you build for somebody, you have to get to the heart of that. Because, and it's not just that. Like, so for a lot of the clients that we have at like Winding River, they want to be thought leaders, right? Like they want to be seen a certain way in the marketplace, and they have real or not differentiators that they've established to say like, this is who we are and this is how we're different. And that has to be the drumbeat. And almost always that deteriorates the SEO value of their content, sometimes significantly, where you're like, this doesn't even matter that we post this online. It could be a PDF. Like that's how valuable it is for SEO. It isn't, but it's important to them, right? So like, it's really important for us to look at this stuff, for us to start to memorize and be able to say, and that's where we need to be able to look at tools like this, let them teach us, okay, these are the keyword families related to this. I can look at a piece of content and say, that's not going to work for SEO. Like it's just, it doesn't have the right secret sauce. It doesn't have the right combination of keywords. And yet that doesn't dictate the final decision of whether or not it's useful to a business. Because you could approach it from the other side too. You could say, look at this and be like, nobody wants to read this. Don't put it on your website. And it's like, well, this is useful to this business, right? Because it's getting people to their website where they're not really meant to read it. They're just meant to click through to a product so that this company can make a sale. So I think it's really just important for us to be like, to understand the bigger picture of how SEO and SEO content fits into a strategy, and then be able to have a tool like this to objectively measure it is huge. Because then you can prove to a client, okay, the thought leadership piece that you just wrote that you want to turn into SEO, if I turn it into SEO friendly content, this is what it will read like. That's not me saying, that's not my opinion. That's this tool, right? Objectively, this is how it will read. These are the keywords it has to have. Is this your line? Are you willing to go there, or do you want to keep this content kind of, in this category, whatever? Then you can have those kind of thoughtful discussions, because it's been historically really hard to prove that. It feels very subjective to people when you say to them, like, this isn't going to work, or this is going to work, right? They're like, how do you know? It's like, well, I do know, but it's really hard to prove it. Now we can prove it. We can plug it in this tool and say, based on every other piece on the internet that ranks for this key phrase that you want to rank for, this will not rank. What do you want to do? And then it becomes a more pragmatic kind of objective conversation. Let's see. Okay. The last thing I'm going to do is just quickly show you the content planner, because there is one. Again, don't use it. It will give you all the wrong ideas, but it is there, and you should probably know about it if you ever want to use this tool. Where is it, Ashley? I mean, Lindsay? Did we take it off our dashboard because we hate it?
I don't know. I don't think I've ever used that feature on it.
Yeah.
I mainly just use content editor.
Yeah.
And that's it.
I'm not gonna lie to you guys. I think we might have taken it off somehow. Interesting.
There's domain planner.
Right. What is grow flow? I've never even seen this. Okay, well, somehow I can't find it, but I'll send you a follow-up video of it, because I'm sure there are videos of how to use it. But basically what you can do is you can insert a keyword or a key phrase, and it will build an outline for you. And it will say, like, if you want this to rank, here H1, H2s, blah, 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 blah. I think it's problematic because it's, first of all, like a dramatic oversimplification. I think everything in the in-between is probably what matters more at the end of the day for Google than just what your headers are. And that's pretty much all it gives you. I think it totally like leaves out the incredibly important linking strategies and like interlinking, external linking, all of that. So I don't know that it's particularly helpful. So I would recommend for the most part using this tool that you go in, you do existing content. Oh, maybe it's here, outline builder. Here, let's look really quick. Surfer AI generated. Yeah. So this is it. I don't know why I'm not seeing it in our regular. We could just look through it real quick. So basically what it'll do is it'll tell you, like, here's a title that we would probably recommend that you use, right? Here are the headings that we would probably recommend that you use, right? Affected wood, dry rot smell, why does wet rot occur? So you'll see it's gonna start pulling elements of the top ranking pages for that key phrase in and building your outline according to that. So like what we said at the very top of the call when I was describing this basically just tells you how this key phrase, content that ranks well for this key phrase, is structured this way by the top ranking pages. So what does this do? It's basically telling you copy them. If you copy them, you'll succeed. Will you? I've never written an entire website or had an entire strategy just based on Surfer SEO recommendations. So I can't say from personal experience with confidence that that would work. It probably would, right? It stands to reason mathematically it would. But you also have a lot of other considerations as you're creating content for a website, like CX and customer journey and all that kind of stuff. But it is valuable to look at all this, right? Because, like I said, great SEO writers will automatically start to think about what's the question version of this phrase, right? What's the negative version of this phrase? What's the, swap the order version? Like, you're automatically going to start building those things. But if you're kind of new to SEO content, or if you're just like getting back in it, like, this is a really valuable way to think about the variations that you probably didn't think about. at the beginning. Like when we're first teaching anybody SEO, right? Like we make them do an outline and then do like 3 FAQ questions because it's so important for them to understand how to rank in Google Knowledge Center. So yeah, so this is just kind of helpful. It gives you like, everything we've done in the content editor is descriptive. This is prescriptive, right? Like this is telling you what you should do if you want to rank for that key phrase. So it's helpful in that sense. I don't know. Let's see if what did it do? Add this entire section of content. Interesting. So it's actually like plugging it in. Yeah, look at that. Don't ever do this. This is so shady. There's no way this isn't somehow plagiarized.
I usually just go to the, like within the content editor.
Yeah.
With like the keywords and the NLP and stuff, they have a section for headers. And then you can like plan out your own outline from the headers. Or headings, that's what I mean. So like,
Here.
yeah, right there, the headings. And then you kind of just formulate using those.
I do like that the interface, like the UI of this content, first of all, that it does allow multimedia. It allows links, codes, you know, so if you want to do an embed code for like a YouTube video, and it factors that into your score. So, you know, like multimedia is a big deal, like adding photos and video. Google likes the richness of that. And it'll factor it into your score. And that's another thing, you know, you think of like, okay, for this example, like for these home services companies and stuff, like having videos is usually a really common play. And so understanding like, does that affect your SEO or doesn't it? Like it might not. Like it would be nice to know, right? Like if it would or not, in which case you could copy and paste an entire piece of content in here that includes those elements and then see what it does to the score. Like, does it affect or not? Which can be helpful because you'll notice it is a factor here, right? So like how many images does a page that ranks well for this key phrase include, right? That's an important thing to know because a lot of people just use the grid image and nothing else, right? This obviously, this dry rot piece has tons of gross images. Anything else, Lynn, since you are so familiar with this tool that you want to point out?
The only thing I would say is if you are going to use this, whether you're creating a new piece of content or editing for optimization an existing piece of content, the first thing you always want to do is you go up on the left hand or the right hand side, like go all the way up above the content score.
Mm-hmm.
Like scroll up a little.
Sorry.
And then see the little gear, like the settings button. You go there, and then you want to look through all the links on this, like the competitor's score, because sometimes it'll give you like Amazon or just some totally irrelevant, useless website to compete with. And if the toggle is on, it'll kind of mess up your content suggestions because you're not obviously going to compete with like Amazon or like I don't know, like a shop page. So you just want to go through that and click like either the highest scoring pieces or like the highest authority pieces that isn't just like completely useless to like what you're trying to write, if that makes sense, because it can really mess up the whole keyword suggestions and like content structure and everything.
Yeah,
I learned that the hard way.
if you're like a 300 a month site and you're trying to compete against Amazon, like its recommendations are not relevant for you.
Yeah.
Anything else in the UI that you found not instinctive or would be helpful for people to know, Linz?
That's like pretty much the only thing I could think of.
Mm-hmm.
If you go back and look at the content rating or the content score, if you click that little details button with the arrow, it'll tell you like a visual of how you're doing as you write. So that's kind of helpful. Like you'll see it gradually go up and then see what area you need to focus on more. for optimizing any particular piece. And then, like I said, the headings are helpful for like making your H2s and H3s.
And I think most often, like we'll pull this back out into a Google Doc before we give it to a client. You can share the link straight from here, but I think for the most part, like, I don't know, for me, like when I'm optimizing, I find the scoring very distracting. And then like, I need to pull it out and read it in the real world, like a human again, before I'm done with it. So that it's not, because like you'll get tricked into thinking it sounds okay because your score is good. Maybe I'm just a performance person. So that like stresses me out. I'm like, I'm winning. And then I pull it out and I'm like, that's terrible. Like, so, right. I mean, right, Lynn's like, you got to kind of like take it back out into the real world and make sure
Yeah.
you get
You have to, it's like a balance. You don't want it to sound too perfect or robotic, but at the same time, you want to try and like get all those priority like keywords and everything in there. So it is like a game kind of. And I don't know if you can share directly with people unless they have an account. So definitely give them a Google Doc anyway.
yeah. I feel like you can,
I
but
feel
I
like you
don't feel like it's
it
helpful.
won't- I don't know if it allows them to see it or not. I don't know.
Yeah, maybe not. Well, yeah. Okay. Do we feel like that was helpful to kind of understand how this tool works? Cool. And if you use a different one like it, I still feel like a lot of the points that we covered were meaningful in that this is a tool. A human has to use it. Let it educate you. Let it begin to inform your thinking and build those, frameworks of understanding so that you can be better at what you do and you can write good content faster, right? Yep. Okay. Anybody have anything else?